Well, hi, Kat. You are a repeat offender on the We Are Superman podcast. Thanks so much for coming back.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back 3 times through. This is awesome. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, you're counting. Okay, yeah, yeah, 'cause it is
Glad you
three
still want to
times. Yeah,
talk to me.
right. Well, you come up with a good story every time. So that's what's so fun. I mean, last time we talked, you had just done Moab, I guess,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And in fact, earlier today, I rewatched your video that you made after that, just because you had such interesting experiences there. But you've managed to up the ante, so to speak. You're doing Cocodona.
Yep.
But how long ago is Cocodona now? It's a few weeks now, right?
Yeah, it started May 5th. So yeah, a little bit over a month now away. I think about 5 weeks past Cocodona now.
Yeah, so you've had a chance to quote get back into real life, although as we
Oh
said,
yeah.
it's involving dogs and
Yeah.
moving and all that kind of stuff. So very,
Yeah.
very cool. Hey, real life is good too, right?
For sure. Have to keep a low level of chaos just to keep my husband entertained and not bored and keep life interesting, you know. He likes to live in a steady chaos for so
Oh Lord, do I know about that? So yeah, that's good. So you've got this new pup there. What's the pup's name?
yeah, his name is Remington. We call him Rem or Rem dog. He's a
Okay.
Hungarian Vizsla that we just adopted 2 weeks ago to be my new running buddy. He's helping me get super fit for Leadville. And yeah, just a great addition to our home is also a bit of controlled chaos, but
Right.
sweet boy.
All right. Why Remington?
Jason came up with that one. He's very regal. He's like he's a short coppered colored coat. And it's kind of a cross between a German short-haired pointer and a Weimaraner. And so he's like a hunting bird dog. And Jason, yeah, picked out that name because he seemed like a regal king-like fellow in his mannerisms and posture. And so Remy seems like a good dog name that we could quickly say, but it turns out Remy is still too long, so it turns into Rem quite often. So, so Rem dog it is.
Rem dog. All right. Hey, that works.
Yep.
Yeah, just if he gets away in the neighborhood, though, you always have to think about how embarrassing will it be to call your pet, by
Yeah,
whatever name, right?
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
So far, everybody is seems to be well acquainted with him and good. So, hang on.
well, that's good. Yeah, I've got my black cat you saw earlier. She's my outdoor cat, and quite often I'm calling for her. Her name is Judge, and I always wonder, are the neighbors really like, what do they think about somebody out in the backyard yelling for Judge?
Speak. Pause real quick. Ugh.
So in the meantime, though, Rem is hopefully helping you recover from Cocodona.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
If you mean being on my feet way more than I was before, then yes.
Oh, you are on your feet more. Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would have just been lounging around, huh?
Sure.
Yeah.
Does
Okay.
it still very well, but he requires lots of exercise, but he's not quite up to like my normal run speed and cadence yet. We're still kind of training him on that. He's used to running free. So structured running is still a work in progress. So I have to get him out to exercise him for at least an hour and then go and do my run. So it's sorry, Ty, but my training has kind of almost doubled in terms of like movement, even if it's at a low easy base. It's still lots of
There's a lot to be said for that, though.
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'm serious. It could be very helpful and just keeping things moving, keeping the volume up, but
Mhm.
not pounding yourself so badly. So,
Yeah.
I would imagine a race like Cocodona takes a lot of recovery time. I mean, you learn that with Moab. I mean, Um, considering, when we first met in Chile, you were novice, if you would, and you were getting
Mhm.
into the whole trail running world. I mean, you'd
Yep.
only resumed running in what, 2022, I think.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And then,
Yep.
you went down to Chile, which was a rookie experience for you going overseas. And then, you hit Sedona Canyons and so you get up to 125 and then you hit Moab. So it's been a progression. So I think it's wise to be taking a little bit of downtime
Yeah.
before all that. But just to recap for some people, I mean, you did Moab 240. You were
Mhm.
what, third woman overall, I believe?
Yep.
Yeah.
Third woman, 10th overall. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly experienced your share of knowledge gaining, you might say, right?
Yeah. You learn a lot.
Everything from care of your feet to mental challenges throughout the race and everything. Um, would you certainly recommend an experience like that before doing something like Cocodona? I know for a lot of people, Cocodona is kind of their first plunge into
Yeah.
that plus 200 mile world,
Yeah. I think it's hard to say. Like, part of me wants to say Moab was harder than Cocodona, but I think they were just different.
right?
Like terrain and environment wise, Moab felt a lot harder just from how extreme the heat was. Cocodona terrain wise felt easier to me. Um, it rained almost the entire time and it snowed a little bit and it hailed a little bit. So like the weather was just completely different. And it was a little bit more similar to what I'm used to. Had it been a really hot year, I might not feel the same. So I guess I say that to say I don't necessarily think you have to do like a Moab or whatever before doing Cocodona. I think Cocodona is an amazing first 200 miler. And honestly, if anything, I'd say doing an Aerovipa event first would be my recommendation. I think they do such a good job of communication and safety and clear structure to their events that make it really easy to participate in and feel safe. I think their race command, which I unfortunately had to use, is so helpful. All of their like medical teams so helpful. So it's like if I were to send somebody out into the wilderness to run for 200 plus miles, I'd say doing it there is a really great place to start. The aid stations are also a little bit more closer together. And so you're not out by yourself for 5 to 6 hours at a time necessarily. So from that standpoint, the logistics and just like the number of people around is a lot more than maybe some other races that are way out there like Moab.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly some people take on things like, point to point race runs on their own, so to speak, where
Yep.
their support is a moving vehicle or something like that. Good example of that might be something like Badwater.
Mhm.
But at the same time, yeah, it is nice to have those frequent aid stations and everything out there. So, um, for people who are not familiar, a lot of these races allowed pacing during certain
Yep.
points. How much of this race were you allowed to have pacers, or where did you have pacers, or
Yeah.
gaps where you couldn't?
Yeah. So of the 200 and technically the race this year was 256 miles. So of the 256 miles, there was 140 miles that you were allowed to have a pacer. And I had a pacer for all of those 140 miles. So I could pick up a pacer at mile 77. So I ran from 0 to 77 solo. And then there was two sections after the 200-mile mark that you could not have a pacer. They were two 16-mile sections where there was some protected owl habitats. So they were very limited by how many people could go
Mm,
through. And so those two sections it was a 50K equivalent at the end after 200 miles that you couldn't have a pacer, one of which for me was during the middle of the night, unfortunately.
right,
So,
right.
um, but yeah, it kind of changes every year based on the permitting, but more, I would say most of the time past that like 100K ish mark in most races, you can pick up a pacer.
Yeah. And, obviously pacers are there for, motivation and,
Mhm.
sometimes directionally
Yeah.
finding things like that. So,
Yeah.
um, certainly, like there are a lot of races, say like Leadville, for instance, as
Mhm.
you can have a pacer from mile 60 in roughly. How hard is it though to be having a pacer and then suddenly you're in a section, like you say, you're at night, probably in need the most,
Mhm.
just in terms of a lot of the physical and mental needs to suddenly be, okay, you got to go run 50K by yourself at this point.
Yeah. Um, I think it kind of depends on where you're at. Like sometimes it's not an issue and it's just like, all right, yeah, whatever. Like I can go run 16 miles by myself. I do this all the time. It's not really a big
Right.
deal. Like the first one I did solo was I don't even remember the mile mark, to be honest. I can picture where I was, but I
Right.
had just climbed out of Sedona, gone through like the Hangover Trail where there was a lot of like exposed rock scrambling, which was pretty cool. And then I had a 16-mile section, I think nope, can't remember the aid station name, so I'm just not going to try.
Yeah.
And that wasn't bad. I was like by my, it was daytime. There were other runners around. I was actually running, kind of like leapfrogging with Cam Haynes on that section for a while. So I wasn't completely solo and it was fine. Like sometimes I'll just not listen to anything and I'll just focus on moving forward. Sometimes it's all right, listening to some music. Because when I'm with pacers, I often don't listen to music. And
Yeah.
so sometimes that can be a good time to just like check in with myself. Honestly, a lot of those solo sections, I spend time praying and trying to like re-ground myself in like why I'm there and what I'm doing and just like be present. And sometimes not having someone with you can be helpful for that. But then in those night sections, I really, really value having somebody with me, especially late in the race for navigation, for safety, just to have another headlamp. I got chased by a dog going into Fort Tuthill when I was with Jason, and not having him there would have really freaked me out because he was able to like kind of scare the dog off, and I was not in a place to like kind of think through like
Right.
how do I handle this. Like your critical thinking skills are muted, if you will. So yeah, I think it kind of depends on the section that you're in. I think having pacers is so valuable, and I loved getting to spend the time with the pacers that I had. But it can also be good to not have them. So it's a kind of, I guess, a yes and.
Yeah. Yeah. So asking a few questions here that are kind of from the perspective of somebody, let's say, who has never run an ultra, which is not me,
Mhm.
but if I were to ask questions or people would ask me questions, how much of this race were you running and how much were you walking?
Yeah, great question. Um, I spent a lot more of this race running than I spent walking relative to Moab, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There is a good bit of walking involved. I would say, and it is especially in the first 2 days. It's an energy preservation uh, strategy, essentially. Like, yeah, I could run most of the first day, no problem. But if I did that, like, what would that muscular fatigue look like on day 2, day 3? And so
Right.
some of it is quite literally a pacing strategy. And when you're moving a little bit slower, you can eat more. So up long climbs, I'll often power hike on really technical terrain. It's just easier to power hike versus just wasting a lot of precious energy, like trying to like hop from rock to
Sure.
rock and stabilize and so on and so forth. And so what kind of dictates when I'm walking versus where I'm running is this internal effort clock or meter, if you will. So like if I can feel my effort starting to rise to a point that I know is not my like all day steady effort, then I'll back it off. Running downhill, pretty much everything, running flats as much as possible. Late in the race, it's kind of like a walk jog. So something I like to do with my pacers, especially if it's runnable terrain, but I'm really tired. Sometimes the mental fatigue of running is the obstacle and not so much the physical fatigue, which sounds weird, but like my body had no problem running. I just felt really tired and it was hard.
Right.
So doing like a Tabata time, I will have my pacer be like, okay, 1 minute on, 30 seconds walk. So like run for a minute, walk for 30 seconds. And that's a good way to
Right.
like keep a really good average pace, but not burn a lot of matches.
Yeah. How do you maintain that discipline though? To like maybe you're running that minute and say, actually, I feel really good. Maybe I'll go for 2 or 3 minutes,
Mhm.
or just the opposite. Maybe it's
Yeah.
like that 30 seconds isn't enough.
Yeah. Um, we I do it terrain based. So if I'm doing
Yeah.
like a 1 minute run interval and I hit it downhill, I'll just tell my pacer, hey, let's finish to the bottom of this hill and then we'll reset. And some of it is like my pacer is reading my body language, reading my breathing, how much I'm talking or not
Right.
talking. And they can kind of assess that. And I think some of it is just intuition from a lot of years and miles and just knowing myself really well. So if a 1 minute run interval is just like feeling too hard and too fatiguing, okay, maybe we back it off to like 45 seconds or 30 seconds. But it's always at least 30 seconds. And I have to assess like, is it hard because I don't really want to and I'm tired and I'd rather be laying on the ground taking a nap?
Right.
Or is it hard because the effort is too hard? And if it's just a like mentally, I feel tired, then it's just like whatever, like you can run for 30 seconds. It's 30 seconds. You can do anything for 30 seconds and just like kind
Right.
of being that and the accountability of someone being there, counting me down and go and following their feet and walk. So it's like it's such a manageable chunk of time that it's easy to take that smaller step and not think about it in the context, oh, I'm going to be doing this for hours. I'm like, oh no, I'm just running for 30 seconds. And that's a really good way to like break it down. I know that's a strategy that I use, and Coach Ty calls it chunkifying, of like breaking down big tasks into smaller things or really big runs into smaller chunks. And that's a good way to break down a really long race into 30-second increments.
Yeah, no, that's a great strategy, I think, for a lot of things in life.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, can you endure something for 30 seconds? Yeah, sure.
for
That's
sure.
not a problem. I mean,
Yep.
I've felt that even, getting physical therapy kind of stuff. I've had therapists that, God, anybody else would be crawling off the table here. And it's like, no, I just get the mindset of like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be pounding on me like this for a minute and it's going to be over. So I just
Yep.
grit my teeth.
Yep.
So yeah,
100%.
absolutely. Um, one question I always get with running, say, I'll use the Leadville 100 as an example. It's never taken me more than 29 hours and 58 minutes, 30-hour time limit there. But people always ask, like, well, what did you do about sleep? And, I say to them, well, I didn't. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
I can stay up for that long.
No need.
Yeah. But in a race that goes on for many days like yours, obviously you've got to work sleep in there. And I know with Moab, you kind of took a wing it approach to it,
Mhm.
because you weren't quite sure what was going in. But with Cocodona, did you have a sleep strategy?
Yeah, it was still a little bit of a play-by-play plan. And in retrospect, I would change how I handled it. But what my strategy was going in, I was like, okay, I'm looking at the start list. I'm looking at the long rap sheets of great race results from a lot of the women in the front of the field. I'm like, okay, objectively, I don't have their experience. I don't know if I can run as fast as them, but I know I can be out there for a long time. And I know that I didn't need that much sleep at Moab. I'm planning on running this race faster than Moab. So I'm going to plan for like 15 to 20-minute naps when I need them, but only take them when I know I can fall asleep immediately. Because there's plenty of people that get really married to their sleep strategy and they try to lay down and they just like lay down and stare at the ceiling and they're wasting time. Like you're wasting time that you could be moving forward, even if you're
Right.
moving slow. And so I only wanted to stop to sleep whenever I was ready to sleep. And so I was just going to do that and then fill in with dirt naps as I needed. Um, the This race threw a lot of curveballs at me and had some unexpected things in terms of like how my body responded. And I think there's a lot of things that went into it, but that strategy didn't end up working very well. Um, I learned that I was running just as fast as the front of the field. Maybe not Courtney and Rachel; they were kind of way off the front. But when it came to like moving speeds around like Sarah, who came in third, and some of the other women that were up there, I was like moving just as fast as them. And so, in retrospect, I probably changed my strategy a little bit to get a little bit more rest, so I could keep my moving speeds up versus just taking incremental shorter stops along the way.
Yeah, I remember reading about, I forget who it was, who he was talking about somebody he was competing against in one of these races said, yeah, that guy like lay down and went to sleep after 8 hours into the race. And he was like, wow, that just made no sense. He said, why would you be tired after 8 hours? But the guy kind of was banking sleep, if you would.
Mhm.
And he kind of had a set strategy. And I think that's great for somebody who can lay down and go to sleep like that. I mean, I am not one of those. If I were to do a race like that, I'd have to do what you did and wait till I'm just like, okay, I need the sleep here because
Mhm.
I'd be, if I wasn't tired, I'd be staring at the roof of a tent or
Right.
inside of a truck or whatever. Yeah.
Like at Moab, I didn't sleep until 114 miles in. Like I was, I think, nearly 34 or something hours in. Like I was well over, I think I was well over the 30-hour mark by the time I took my first sleep. But I think I slept bigger chunks at Moab, just not many of them. Like I did a 45-minute sleep and a 30-minute sleep. And then I think I had a little under 2 hours or around 2 hours of sleep by the 200-mile mark of Moab. And by the time I was there, it's just like, all right, we'll just
You just got
muster
it
for
out.
the finish.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was losing my eyesight, but it's fine. We're almost to the finish, and I'm trying to catch Rebecca, who was
Right.
just ahead of me, and so there's a lot of motivation factors going on. But I think one of the things that made the sleep strategy interesting with Cocodona is at Moab, my race started at noon on a Friday. And so I got a really nice long night of sleep the night before, had a slow morning, could rest,
Mm,
and then start the race. Cocodona started at 5:30 a.m., 5 a.m., 5:30. Can't remember. But we were up at like 3 a.m. the morning
yeah.
of the race. And just with the nature of like getting crews sorted and fed and organized and all of the things, like there's always these tiny little details to have ready and just so before you got the door. Like I wasn't laying down until I think like 8 or 9, or actually 9 p.m. the night before the race. And so I got way less sleep the night before.
Yeah.
And then I think the temperatures played a role a little bit on my energy, just because day one we were in the rain, climbing up to Crown King, and it was cooler. And so that does take some energy to keep your body warm. Um, I think like night one, I spent 10 hours unable to keep food down, which is also new for me. Like, didn't throw up early at Moab at all until after I finished the race. And I don't really throw up in races often. But that obviously takes a huge zap to the energy to spend that much time at altitude,
Yeah.
not eating, but still moving. And so I think that just kind of like pulled some matches, or burned some matches for me, if you will,
Yeah.
that really added up later into the race, which I'm not really sure why I was throwing up. I have some theories. I didn't really stop much at all the first day. I had a 10-minute stop at Crown King and pretty much no stops through the first night that were really substantial at all. So I was doing a lot of moving. I'm fitter than I was for Moab, so I was moving faster. And then unfortunately, my period decided to come for the race too. So I think that threw off my stomach a little bit.
Well,
But
you had that with Moab too, right?
yeah, it's so
Yeah.
weird.
What
I
timing?
don't
Yeah.
understand. I don't understand it. But it was not when it was supposed to be, and I was really frustrated about it. But I was like, I can't change this.
No
I
doubt.
do think the stress load of like my body doing that and then also running an ultra just culminated to upset stomach for 10 hours. And then I had some eggs and pancakes and took a nap in the Normatec boots, and I was good to go after that.
Yeah.
So just needed to slow down and let my body breathe for a second, and we were good to go.
Yeah. I see a
Yeah.
research project coming here though, I mean,
Yeah.
talk to women, find out does that stress somehow change the cycle? I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard it from a few other runners that a lot of times the taper makes their period come early. For me, mine was supposed to come before the race and it came late. So I'm like,
Oh. Hmm.
why? I was really ready for this to not be a thing, but it was fine.
Yeah, I would think then you're going in with a ticking time bomb there. It's in your head, it's like, well, it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and I was like, last thing I want to deal with on trail, but we
Yeah.
figured it out. We're resilient here, so.
Yeah, of course. I mean, often I look at, when you have that gastric distress kind of stuff, that often is related to hydration. And I wonder if maybe because it was raining, maybe you weren't focusing on hydrating as much, or I don't know. Any,
Yeah, hydration is usually one of the first things that tends to slip for athletes and can then impact their ability to digest and empty anything they take in from their stomach, and then things just get weird. For me, I've been able to get data on my sweat rate and my sodium concentration, and I felt very
right.
comfortable with where my levels and my fluid intake should be, and then also where my fueling was. And I thoroughly tested my nutrition this round. I learned some things at Moab, and was right on plan. So I just think it wasn't some environmental things, and just a weird gut day. I'm not really
Yeah.
really certain. I know I have a really high concentration of sodium in my sweat, and I know I tend to lose a lot of sweat. But
Mm,
the interesting thing is the conditions for Moab were pretty much what I trained in all winter. Like
yeah.
most of my training runs are around that 6 hour mark on the weekend, and a lot of them were in freezing rain and snow. Um, so I was like, well, I've done this before. I know what gear I need. I know what's worked. It's not the most fun all the time, but we've done this before. And so, yeah, I'm not really sure what the deal was, but it definitely made it an interesting year. I think Moab,
Yeah.
everything went very smoothly in terms of like there weren't really any major catastrophes. Yeah, I had some foot issues, but um, it didn't derail my race. This time around, there were some significant catastrophes that, looking back, I don't like. They were somewhat in my control, but also not in my control. That did derail my race, and so I think
Yeah.
like Moab, I was able to use fitness. Cocodona, I wasn't really able to fully put my fitness on display, which I think walking away can sometimes feel disappointing. But at the end of the day, like my goal was to run the best race I was capable of, and these races, like it's there's no guarantees. Like anything
Of
can happen
course.
to anyone.
Oh yeah.
Like no one is unbeatable. No one is immune from the crazy things that can happen to your body or to the environment or the weather or whatever. And so that's kind of the part that makes it interesting. And sometimes you just have to deal with what comes at you. So
Oh, absolutely. No, there are always those wild card things. I like to tell I was telling the kids on my track team this spring the story about a kid in cross country years ago who he was the prohibitive favorite to win the region or to win the league meet, I should say, and he eventually won the state title. But before the league meet, somebody gave him a blueberry muffin to eat, and he was violently ill and did not win the league meet. He had a horrible race, and sometimes you never know what's going to happen. So it was kind
yeah,
of funny when we came to regionals. Everybody was offering him a blueberry muffin as a joke. I mean, because everybody liked the kid, but they're just like, "Hey,
yeah.
Gabe, have a blueberry muffin here." And you just never know when somebody does something or some act of God, whatever happens. But it does happen out there. One thing you mentioned though, last summer I did one of those sweat tests too, and I would highly, highly recommend to people because for me, as may have been for you, it was an eye opener. I mean, I always knew I had a pretty high sodium concentration because I could see it in the salt rings of my shirt and my hat and stuff. And I was actually shocked at how much fluid I lost.
Yep.
And so when I ran Leadville last summer, I mean, I drank so much more fluid and I mean, so much sodium concentration. It was kind of crazy. I was a human salt shaker by the end of my run,
No,
but I didn't have the leg cramps, which had been
nope.
plaguing me for years. So, like I say, I do highly recommend that. Um,
Highly recommend it. And if
yeah.
you don't have like a place to go get tested or there's not a dietitian in your area, like there's not a facility for me to go that's easily accessible to where I live. So I was using the H drop monitor, which I've seen a few dietitians using with their athletes. And I have a friend who's a dietitian who's actually on my team, and I was like, hey, like what do you think of this device, and like how accurate do you think it is? And she was like, yeah, I think it's great. There's a lot of teams testing it around me. So that's what I used, and it's just a wearable that goes on your arm. And the beauty of it is I could test it in real time in variable conditions. So like I could
Oh
test it on
yeah.
a clean run, I could test it on a hot run. I tested it inside on the treadmill in hot conditions. And that way I had a good reading and gauge of like, okay, how do I need to adjust nutrition even from like day to night? And I'm glad I got the rainy condition data and the hot condition data because I got a little bit of both. But yeah, that's a super valuable tool that highly recommend if there's not something accessible by you.
Yeah. What was the name of that again?
It's called H drop.
Okay.
They're these little wearables. I think they're being tested in the military and some sports teams and things of that nature.
Nice.
Cool little device.
Yeah. Very cool. Another thing that with this race, I was following along day by day in the social media posts out there, as opposed to like after your Cocodona, you had I'm sorry, after your Moab, you had like a recap video and things like that. But one of the things you mentioned was in your training, you trained with your gear, and I think that was really good advice because some people will go out and do their long runs and training for whatever, and maybe they're out there running in shorts and no shirt on, whatever, and they're
Mhm.
maybe they've got aid stations set up out there so they don't have to carry so much. And in the end, though, you found out an awful lot just by wearing the gear, testing the gear, whether it was your cold weather gear, your rain gear, your
Mhm.
I think even things like trekking poles. You need to spend some time practicing those things.
Mhm.
The anti-chafing thing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's always an eye opener for people, because
Mhm.
when you start getting all salty and everything, man, the game changes out there.
Yeah.
So,
Wearing your same clothes for multiple days, things get weird. So,
right, yeah. So, I mean, in particular with your gear, like what did you learn in training about some of your gear that
yeah.
absolutely paid dividends when you're running Cocodona?
Yeah, so I think a good starting place would be things that I learned in Moab that had to change was my pack setup. My pack was way too heavy for Moab, and it was actually inhibiting me from running because it was so heavy. It was
Hmm,
probably 20 pounds at any given time, just between needing to carry 5 to 6 liters of water by nature of how far away the aid stations were, and then also all of my required gear. I had to carry cold weather kit all the time, and so it's like, okay, I need to come back to the drawing board and find a better way to make my pack lighter while still carrying what I need, but nothing more than I need. And so I sat down with Coach Ty and we kind of thought through some ideas. And he's the kind of the athlete that is going to sit and weigh every gram of gear and cut tags off things. So I'm like, okay, I need to
right,
have this level of scrutiny over what's going in my pack. And so I actually had a pack made for me specifically for this race by Blair. He's awesome. He's in the New York area. He actually made Ty's pack as well for his Project Himalaya. And so he made me one for Cocodona based on how and where I wanted to carry my gear. So that was the first thing because I wanted to be able to run fast and efficiently and not have my legs get tired because my pack was too heavy. So I switched instead of having a big bladder in the back and 2 bottles in the front, I switched to doing more flasks because it's easy to distribute water at different places.
right.
It's also faster to refill at aid stations when you're by yourself and not with a pacer, so you're not like fumbling with the bladder. So I had him create 2 side pockets on the back of my pack, kind of like the typical water bottle pockets on like a school backpack, but
Yeah,
specifically for running flasks. I had 2 flasks on the back, and then I had a like pull through that was easy for me to access. That was kind of like an envelope in the back, so I could put a flask there, and then I also had my bladder. So that was one thing that I had been meticulously testing, and then I also um, was supported by Chile, which was awesome. And so they helped me a lot in testing all of my rain gear. So they sent me plenty of apparel through my training season so I could test like how different fabrics felt, where the seams were, how the waterproofing was, which I had to test in cold, rainy runs here, and I didn't
yeah.
expect to have to use it in Cocodona, but I'm really glad I did use it. And then trying to find the right layers where I would have to carry as few layers as possible that could get me through a lot of different environmental changes. So I had rain pants, I had a windbreaker, a rain jacket, and then the same sand bobs that I used in Moab, which are the ultralight alpha direct material. So they keep you very warm without a lot of weight. So those were some
What
major
did you call
things
those
that
sandbobs?
Sam Bob. Yeah.
Yeah,
So he's out of Maine and he creates these custom fleeces out of like a grid fleece material and then alpha direct fabric, which is there's 3 different weights, but it's this very warm and insulating and hydrophobic material. So it repels water. It's not waterproof, but it keeps it away from your skin. And they're very, very warm and breathable, but very, very light. So it's a material that first started popping up, I believe, in like through hiking and backpacking and has kind of made
mm,
its way into the run apparel space. But he custom made me 2 different warmth weights of them for Moab, and I've been using them religiously since. They're so useful,
yeah,
especially if you like because I would layer the Chile rain jacket on top and have one of those underneath and toasty warm, but like you don't get too hot because they're quite breathable. So
yeah. That's
kind of
cool.
that nice balance and they don't weigh a lot. So that was that. And then I basically just eliminated everything out of my pack that I would carry around Moab and never use. Because
Right.
I was like, I don't know what I'm going to need, but I don't want it like my race to get ruined by having something that I needed and didn't have with me to solve a problem on the spot.
Right.
But I learned what I actually used to solve problems and like what's at aid stations and what I could get along the way. And so that kept my pack a lot lighter. And I worked really closely with my team to like, okay, this is what I used in my training. These are the clothes that I use. These are what works in these conditions. Um, and then on the foot front, I'm happy to report that I didn't have a single blister for all of
Woohoo.
Cocodona.
Nice.
And that was thrilling. And so, but I didn't change my shoes. I still wore Topo Ultra Ventures and Topo Mountain Racers. And then their new shoe that's coming out, the Vista. So I wore those as shoes, and then my socks were the same. They are the Creepers Merino wool toe
Right.
socks. They were fantastic. It was a lot less of a fine sand course, so that helped with the on the blister front. But I also pre-taped my feet this time around, and so I didn't have any issues, which I'm really, really grateful for because you never know when your feet are wet that much, like what's going to happen on the
Yeah.
blister.
What did you tape them with?
I used Leukotape and a spray adhesive. I
Hmm.
used a Mueller like athletic trainers, just like sport adhesive tape or spray, and then on my feet before the race, and then I taped them. And between the Leukotape and that, I only had to change the tape once the whole race, so it stayed on for like well over 100 miles. Switched
Nice.
out, and then didn't have to touch it again the rest of the race, which was great. And I only put that on my heels because those are a sensitive spot for me, and then on my instep, but didn't have to worry about any of my toes or anything because that's what toe socks are for.
Right, right. Yep, exactly. So you didn't use my old school method though.
No, I did not. I don't want my toes like stuck together in pantyhose. I think like I like my feet to like
Yeah,
spread.
yeah. No, I was gonna
I
say it
think
wouldn't
wearing
work with
real
the toe
socks is so
socks.
weird now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, my women's nylon solution is, yeah, like I said, it's truly old school, but hey, it works and it's really cheap.
Yep, it sure is.
Yeah,
Sure is.
yep. Yeah, I thought 99 cents a pair was too much, so I buy them in bulk on Amazon.
Hey, gotta do what
Yeah.
you gotta do.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, cool. That's amazing. All those little bits there that you've thrown
Yep.
together there, and just something as simple as leukotape.
Yeah.
But as usual in a race, and I always say, I wish everybody was an ultra runner because they would be able to figure things out because something goes wrong at some point all the
Yep.
time, just like it does in life. But you had your share of them over at Cocodona, including, I mean, the part that always got me was the whole part about the disorientation or the panic attacks or whatever. I mean, that was kind of stunning. I'm sure I can't imagine like heading out on the trail being just like totally confused about where the hell am I and what am I doing here and
Yeah.
stuff like that. What was going on?
Yeah, so I guess for context, that was going into the last night. So I guess that would have been night three. I spent day two. Day two, I caught up to Sarah, who was in third position. So night two, I put in a big surge with my pacer, Rebecca, who she was actually the second female at Moab. So we spent all that time chasing her through Moab, and she helped me chase people through Cocodona, and that was really special.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, we put in a big surge that second night. By the days are rolling together, but um, by the time morning came on the pacing section with her, we had caught Sarah at an aid station. She was napping, and I stopped to like eat, reset. We were going to go into a big section through Sedona. And so I spent the day with her, did a solo 16-mile section, picked up Jason, did 20 something miles with him. And the plan was at the end of that 20-mile section with Jason was to take a longer sleep. Up until that point, I'd only slept like 10 to 20 minutes at a time or so, and only a handful of times.
right.
And this was, I have no sense of time, but it had been 2 nights, I think, at that point. And so we were going into our third night. And on that pacing section, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, like when it got dark, it was still raining. I had been putting in like a good bit of work to get up to Sarah. Like we were moving about at the same pace, I think. Her crew was just getting her out of aid station just a bit ahead of me. Um, and so I just like closed a multi-mile gap. We got into Fort Tuthill, which is at mile 213, I believe. And she was there. We got in there at the same time. So at this point, like we were both sitting in third female position. Um, and coming into that section, Jason and I got chased by this dog, and I have a really big fear of getting chased by dogs. As we were talking before we started the podcast, is like I've been chased by some pit bulls before, and I just get really freaked out by getting chased by dogs on feet. I was
Yeah,
also
not many people are fans. Yeah.
pretty deep into this race,
Right.
like tired but working, and I like knew we were getting closer to Flagstaff, so it's just like okay, like the race is on, like I need to be focused, but I'm also really tired and really ready to nap. And so I kind of laid down for this nap. Our system, when I did nap, was to come in, get into the Normatec boots, eat food, go to sleep, get up, and get out the door. So essentially,
Right.
my body could recover from like a blood flow in my legs to fuel my body, some sleep, get out.
Yeah.
Um, and
Be-
hello. Um, so I had laid down in the Normatec boots, and Jason was giving me my food, and I was eating some food, and I just like felt in the back of my head, like going into this next section, like I had kind of been dreading it because I knew it was going to be 16 miles solo through the night, and um, I just like I wasn't excited about it, to be honest. I felt
Right.
nervous about it, and then we were just chased by a dog, and I knew we were going to be on social trails in and around Flagstaff, and I was like, I just don't know what I'm going to run into by myself. And so like I fell asleep a little bit anxious. Um, and the last thing I remember is like them like closing out the lights and like going to sleep immediately. And the next thing I remember is like I was awake, I was sitting up. Jason was holding me. My sisters were trying to put clothes on me, and I was just remember like crying so hard, and I didn't really know what was going on. Like I thought I was like it wasn't like it didn't feel like reality. Like in retrospect, like I know that happened, and I have remembrances of those feelings and of like a blur of the visuals, but in that moment, like I wasn't in that moment. Um, and so some of the storytelling is like what people have told me, and some of it is actually
Right.
like my
Yeah,
memory of
I get
it.
that. Right.
And so like they got me up. It was kind of a fight. I was just like really fighting it. I was in the throes of a pretty serious panic attack, and it was really hard for. I mean, two of my sisters were helping me and my husband, and it was very hard for them to um, emotionally deal with that, but I think they did a really great job of just like knowing the bigger objective at hand and keeping me to that, even though emotionally it wasn't the easiest thing for them to deal with. Um, but yeah, eventually got me out of the van, had to go get check out of the aid station. So they took me, checked me out of the aid station. Um, and then the like only memory I really have is like walking out of Fort Tuthill. Jason was walking me out, and tears were streaming down his face. And he was like, "Why are you doing this to me?" It makes me cry to think about it. And I could just tell he was so hurt and so scared for me, sending his wife out into the woods whenever I was clearly like not okay.
Right.
Um, and they were like, "It's okay. She'll get out of it. She'll wake up. It'll be okay." Um, and next thing I remember is like walking up to this trail intersection and like looking at the ground, and there's like all of these signs, and at this point like the course has merged with like the Flagstaff crest with or the Eldon crest. There was the Mingus Traverse, there was the Sedona Canyons one type. So there's multiple race signs and I like couldn't find one that said Cocodona 250 course on it. I didn't couldn't figure out like where to go. I pulled out my phone to try to like use Caltopo, couldn't figure out how to use directions. And then I remember this like headlamp bubble coming up, and it was Sarah walking up. So she had left just like
Yeah.
short for me, I think. And I was like, "Hey, Sarah, do you like know where we need to go?"
Right.
um, uh, and from that point, like, they had put my AirPods in and called my dad and put him on the phone to like phone pace me through the section to like talk to me to like
Right.
keep me alert and stuff. Um, and I remember I'm like, Dad, I don't know where I'm going. And then I think I asked Sarah, do you know which way to go? She's like, I think this way. And she had also just come out of a sleep. And so like the rest of this section is kind of a blur. Like I remember following Sarah's feet. I didn't couldn't tell if she was real or not. Like she almost seemed like a hallucination to me,
Yeah.
but it sounds really funny. But the one thing that I knew that it wasn't a hallucination is because I could smell like her shampoo or something from her hair. Like it was like a very distinct smell that I had never smelled before. And everyone's like, did she smell bad? I was like, no, she smelled really good. And it was annoying because I smelled really bad.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but like that was the only way I could be like, okay, I think this is real. And
Isn't that the best though, where you're like in the middle of asking, am I hallucinating, or am I in the hallucination
yeah,
imagining reality, or it's always that questioning is the funny part about them.
yeah, it was really unnerving at that time though, because I didn't feel in control cognitively. Like I didn't feel like I really understood what was going on, how to like think myself through. I couldn't tell what was real or not. And I remember my dad's like, "Is Sarah there?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Don't lose sight of her." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Stay on her feet." And he knew how confused I was. Um, and so I just remember like in and out blurs of just like following her feet. And we had a conversation at one point. And I remember being like, hey, do you like want to work together on this section? She's like, yeah, I always get really sleepy on this section. She's done it several
Hmm.
years now.
Yeah, okay.
And she's like, yeah, it's really long and I always get sleepy. And so she was like, so to work together. And I was like, great. Because I'm not okay and I have no idea where I'm going.
Right.
Um, and so I just remember like following her feet for a while. And my crew told me this later, but apparently I ate and drank like the best I had in ages on that section. I
Right.
don't remember doing that. Apparently it was instinctual, like, well, I think maybe in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, maybe if I eat enough calories, my brain will come back. It didn't. Um, turns out that wasn't the problem.
Right.
Yeah, so we were winding through that section. Like later, I later find out I'd been with her for like 2 hours. I don't remember much of that 2 hours. I just have
Right.
like images that come to my mind, but they feel more like remembering a dream than like remembering reality. Um, and I remember getting to this point where I was just like, I felt just and I don't even really remember what triggered it, but there was just this feeling of like desperation where I was just like, I need to get back to Jason. I'm not okay. Like,
Yeah.
kind of like that feeling if you've ever had recurring dreams where like you're running from a loved one or like you're running to a loved one from something and you feel like you just like can't get to them, like there's something like stuck between you. And
I usually dream about not getting to the finish line of a race.
Yeah, I've had dreams where just like protecting my family for something or someone's chasing us or whatever, and you're like
Right.
really fast but like going nowhere. Like that's kind of how I felt, and I was just like this desperation feeling of like I need to find Jason, and I just like felt so anxious. It's like I don't know where I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to find him. And so I remember turning to Sarah. I was like, Sarah, like I'm not okay. Can you help me? And she's like, well, of course, like, yeah. And it was, I think what's really cool about this whole thing is like, I had been running primarily by myself or just me and my pacer for days. Like I hadn't been running with another racer. Like I
Right.
had been leapfrogging a little bit with like Cam Haynes on a 16-mile section like 30 miles ago. But like this was the only point in the race where had been running with another female racer, and this was the first time in the race in days that I had been running with another racer in general.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that, and I think that is such a blessing because in this moment, if I were by myself, I don't know what would have happened. Like clearly, like Race Command had my tracker, my family had my tracker, but there's limited cell service. Like they knew roughly where I was,
Yeah.
but in this moment, like I needed someone to be there. And we had to like backtrack on course a bit. She got a race command on the phone. She got on the phone with Jason. They figured out where we were at. And she backtracked on course with me. I don't know how far or how long, to be honest. I just remember like faint blurs of things. And then eventually connected with Jason. She went back out, and then he brought me back to the van. And by the time he had gotten to us, again, this is me kind of repeating what I've been told. It's just like my eyes are like rolling back in my head. And so they got me back to the van. I went in the van and just like collapsed onto the bed and didn't wake up for 6 hours. Um, at some point, I talked to my coach on the phone. I have no recollection of this. At some point, medical came in and checked on me. I have no recollection of this. Um, they were like, yeah, it's probably some kind of like sleep deprived psychosis. Like, there's really nothing you can do. Just let her sleep. When she wakes up, like, we'll check on her.
Yeah.
Um, and it was really scary for me because I've never had that level of cognitive loss of control before, where I really couldn't like think or process or figure things out. And just like visually looking around me, I felt like I was in a dream state, but it was like my real life. And I don't remember much of having panic attacks. I think like our best guess is that they woke me up in the middle of a sleep cycle, that I was so tired that my brain didn't come back fully online, and so I had some of that underlying anxiety and nervousness going into my sleep, carried that into my sleep. They woke me up into that, um,
Mm,
and none of us really could have predicted or controlled that. Like I
right.
never had issues like that at Moab before. I got way less sleep and was fine. But yeah, so I stopped at Fort Tuthill and slept in the van for I think like 6 hours instead of sleep. And Jason tried to wake me up multiple times to see if I could like get back out.
Right.
Um, couldn't wake me up. I was pretty out.
Right.
And I think like at 7 hours had passed, you could finally like it was like stirred me. And I just remember waking up, and it felt so surreal because I'd worked so hard for this race, and I just felt like it had all dissipated. Like I'd gotten into podium position, I was running really strong, and I was just like, it was just a level of defeat that and like deep sadness over the race, but also
Thinking that you'd blown the race at this point.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that whole experience was terrifying.
Yeah.
Like I don't really know if I have the language to put to it. Objectively, I was not unsafe because there were safety measures in place between things that the race had established and my crew knew where I was. But from an emotional perspective and from like experiencing a level of disorientation that I had never experienced before, like it was really scary. And the feelings that I experienced in, I would say, a not real state
Right.
settled in a really real way, like that fear of like not being next to the person I love most in the world and trying to get to him and like not being okay. It
Right.
sounds crazy, but it's like um it it hit me in a way I didn't expect, and I just remember really struggling with that when I was waking up and kind of like I didn't really have a panic attack, but I just bawled my eyes out because I was like, that was really heavy and really hard. And I've mourning my race a little bit. Like I had been stopped for like 8 hours by the time that I left Fort Tuthill, and I had done all that work, and I was just like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
I don't want to go back out there. I don't want to do a section by myself. Like the goal I had for this race is like long gone. Um, and I can't bear the thought of leaving again by myself. And at this point, it's daytime. Um, and so they just kind of like let me process out loud. I was mostly sitting with Jason and my sister. They got me some water and I had some oatmeal. Um, and I remember them saying like, "Do you want to head back out?" And I was like, "I really don't think so. I, I don't want to go back out there." And they
Yeah.
weren't going to force me this time.
No.
And the more I thought about it, I was like, what am I going to regret more? And I just had this like this feeling in the back of my head that I was like, I should try, but I really don't want to try. Like I
Right.
really I don't want to keep going.
Yeah.
Um, and Jess, she's my older sister. She's the best. This is the first race she's ever crewed, and she did a phenomenal job. But she was just like, can you just say a small yes? And I was like, I can do that. She's like, can you stand up? I was like, okay, I can stand up. I know I can do that. And it wasn't like a manipulative way of like, I'm going to manipulate you into going back out. It was like a genuine, like, what are the smallest steps you can take right now? Because
Yeah.
I know it's too overwhelming to think about going and finishing this race right now. But like, can you take a step forward out of your like fear and paralyzed anxiety state right now?
Right.
Um, and so I did. It's like I stood up. She's like, "Okay, can you get checked by medical?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can go back and get checked by medical." So I went in there and they checked me, and they're like, "Yeah, you're good to go. You're totally fine." And I was like, "Well, I really don't have an excuse now."
Right. It's like, damn it, I was hoping for worse news.
And I was like, "This is a sunny day. This is the first time it hasn't been raining. We can't check into our Airbnb until 3 p.m. So what am I going to do? Just sit around and sulk all day?"
Okay, that's incentive.
And yeah, and I think around the similar time too, I forgot to mention this, but there was a Bible verse that I had been reading before Cocodona. It's in Isaiah, and it basically, and it's Isaiah is a book of prophecy that prophesies Jesus coming. And there's this one chapter that talks about how it's essentially this poetic form of saying like the Lord is doing something new and he's going to redeem his people. And it talks about rivers in the desert and making a way in the wilderness. And like, don't you see it? I'm doing something new. And it quite literally predicted the whole race because I ran through rivers in the desert that you should not see. And I saw his protection and provision over me. And I was reading that like 4 days earlier on my own. And the morning of the race, Jason opens his phone and there's this Bible app widget that will give you like the verse of the day that you can just kind of see from your home screen. And it was that exact same verse of making a way in the wilderness. And
I
um,
knew the Bible was written with ultramarathoning in mind. Yeah.
yes, I knew it. And so that was, he shared that and I read that in that same process of just asking me to say a small yes. And I just like felt in my soul is like, I need to try. I don't know if I'm going back out, but I need to try. And so like that kind of led me into saying the small yeses. I got checked by medical and we walked out of the medical room and we're just kind of congregating around the aid station and my crew were talking to one another and I like turned and I whispered to Jason. I was like, I think I want to try. And it was hard for me to even put those words out of my mouth because sometimes I'm so stubborn that if somebody tells me to do something, it's the thing I don't want to do. And I
Right.
knew deep down, everyone wanted me to go back out. They just weren't saying it. And I was like, it
Right.
took some humility. I was like, I want this for me, but at the same time, I just want to leave. Like I feel so many feelings at the moment. Um, I'm like, what's the point of me going just to like what walk it in? Good job, you finished. Like that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Um, but I was like, okay, well, I'm here for a reason, and Lord knew this was going to happen, and so I need to be faithful in being brought high and being brought low, and like still doing what I'm meant to do, whether it's good or bad. And so I was like, okay, I have to go. So my crew got me ready. I went out and I ran some of the fastest splits I had the whole race, the
Wow.
rest. And I stopped at Fort Tuthill for 8 hours. I went from third position to seventh or eighth position for women. Um, and so I was like, as I was walking out, I asked my crew, I was like, where are the next two women at?
Right.
And I was like, I need to know. And so I spent that 16. They're like they caught Raceman on the phone and they said that they could pull me out of the course, bring me back to Fort Tuthill, and if I wanted to resume the race, they could drop me off at the point where they picked me up. So they dropped me off, and it was like another 13 or something miles because we had to out and back to get to an accessible road when I was with
Yeah.
Sarah. So it was 13 miles from the point they dropped me off to the next aid station. And I ran, yeah, some of my fastest splits of the whole race through there and just kind of got my head on straight. And I was like, you know what, it's not over yet. I'm gonna keep fighting. And so I caught the next female by the time I got to that aid station, did a very quick in and out, picked up my pacer Rebecca, and um, made my way over to the base of Mount Eldon. There was one more aid station. And then we climbed Eldon, and it was maybe one of the strongest race finishes I've had. Usually by that point in the race, like I'm complaining, and like I didn't say a word. I was like right foot, left foot. We're climbing this mountain, I have a shot at catching fourth. I'm going to do my very best. It's gonna
Right.
be a stretch. It would take a miracle, but I can try. And I ended up being able to move up a few positions. I was I got I don't know how accurate the trackers were, but I I went up Eldon not slow.
Yeah.
I don't know what the paces were for other people, but I think um, if I had bet money on it, I was probably one of the faster women up Eldon.
Yeah.
Definitely in podium time up Eldon if I hadn't stopped for 8 hours. Um, and then, and I guess for listeners, Mount Eldon is a mountain in Flagstaff. It sits like 9,200 feet or so. And the climb up there is, depends on which way, but if you take the Eldon Lookout, which is what we went down, it's 2,700 or 2,800 feet of vertical in 2 miles or something
Oh,
like that.
wow. That's
Very steep,
significant. Yeah.
very rocky. We went up the backside of it and then up the ridge line and we dropped down and it's stepping off like child-sized boulders. It's very steep and technical and not easy on tired legs, but my legs
No
got tired
kidding.
because I stopped for 8 hours. So um yeah, I put in a hard effort and an effort that I was really proud of because I went from not thinking I would ever see the finish line, that I was going to do
Right.
in a race, that I was going to disappoint people who had been following me, disappoint my sponsors, disappoint myself, disappoint all of the people that helped get me there. And like I was very much wrestling with all those feelings before I'd even made that decision. And yet I found myself within striking distance of fourth and fifth position after having stopped for so long. Um, and yeah, anyway, put in a really hard effort. Like I was running hard off of Eldon. There's a video on the Aravipa's Cocodona Chronicles of me coming down, and the guy filming me. He's like, I don't think I've seen anyone come down Eldon this fast. And I was like, good thing I train on the East Coast because I'm used to these rocks.
Right,
Um,
right.
and my legs felt fine. I felt coordinated. Becca was just like timing my nutrition perfectly. She's like, we are not bonking on this and we are not falling. So if you don't bonk and you don't fall, you're going to do great. She would be like, all right, in 2 minutes, I'm shoving food in your mouth. And it was excellent. So she did a wonderful job. But yeah, I think I got within like 30 seconds of the woman in fifth, if the tracker was right. But I think she heard us coming up on her and just like ran so hard. I think we were within a couple of minutes of each other.
That's amazing
Into the
after all
finish.
that time. Yeah.
And so I ended up finishing in sixth position. And I think that race was truly a battle of attrition from the
Oh, yeah.
lows of not being able to eat for a long period of time and not wondering when I'd be able to eat again. And obviously, like that zaps my energy a lot. Like I couldn't climb as strong. Mentally, I was really defeated. Like there were so many times I came into the aid stations and I looked at Jason. I was just like, I don't want to be here. Like I'm not having fun. Like I, I just don't want to be here. But
Right.
I kept going back out and I was like, all right, I may not want to be here, but I'm supposed to be here. And I'm going to try to do my best that I can. And then, yeah, just so many different battles were fought each and every day. But the biggest one was definitely that last night at Fort Tuthill. And I think the biggest thing was just making the decision to go back out, even though it wasn't really the decision I wanted to make,
Right.
and still making the most of it. I think I can walk away like I'm definitely proud because I gave my best given everything that came with it.
Yeah.
But I still hold a certain level of disappointment because I know that I was capable of finishing so much better. From a time perspective, it ended up being like 86 hours or something. Had I not stopped at Tut Hill for 8 hours, so like what would have been?
Yeah.
But
But
so
then you think,
that's
well, maybe that strong finish wouldn't have happened without that 8 hours at
yeah,
Tut Hill. Yeah.
right. So it's Yeah, it's like a level of, I think I would have waves of disappointment for the first like week or two after the race of just like, wow, now I know where my fitness is relative
Right.
to some really incredible women. I know that I'm fitter than I've ever been and I'm capable of a lot more. I've learned a lot more. I have the logistics a lot more um,
Hmm.
dialed in. Maybe you still need to work on the sleep piece, but there was a lot of confounding factors there. Um, but yeah, I think there was this hand in hand of like, there's this video of the my crew taking a photo of all of us at the finish line, and I like looked at the blue line, and I like whispered to Jason, I was like, wow, I never thought I would see that blue line. And I think yeah, I just like it came down to the small yeses of making the decision to like continue to go back out, to continue to try, to continue to solve problems. Eventually, it got me to the finish line, maybe in a different form than I would have liked, but I still
Right.
walked, having learned a lot and grown a lot, and have so much appreciation for my crew that stood by me so faithfully and resilient, and like they went through the ringer with some stuff too.
Oh
um,
yeah. You have
and
to
so I'm sure
expect it
they
as a
could tell
crew.
you
Yeah.
even
Right.
even better stories than I can because I can't remember half of it.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was a heck of a time out there.
Yeah. I mean, what is the value to you personally, the fact that you didn't quit wherever you could have, the fact that you did make it to the finish, albeit not in the position you wanted, but the fact you did get there, see that blue line.
I think for me, what it really is living out what I actually believe. I think it's really easy to say you believe something, but when it's really hard, um, to not act in alignment with what you say you believe. And I think for me, being there and being like, hey, like I run by faith and not by sight. And that was a moment where it's just like, okay, Kat, how big is your faith actually? Is it just when
Mhm.
things are easy, or is it when it's hard? When you don't feel like it, when you can't really function the way you really can. I think like for me, that was the biggest takeaway. And and that takeaway pervades through my whole life and for races to come. It's like when it's really hard, like will you have the faith in the moments that it's hard that you need to call upon to get you through those things? And I think it's worth noting that this was a chosen life pain that
Oh
I could
yeah.
have stepped away from at any time. There's things people deal with that are not chosen, that are much harder. And for me, like these racers are kind of a vacuum of life where I can put myself to the test in a controlled way and figure out what comes out and to learn like okay, what happens when I'm at the end of myself? Like is the faith that I stand on in my life the same whenever I can't stand on my own 2 feet? And I think for me
Yeah.
that was the biggest takeaway of just like in those moments I have that, um and I can do what I say I believe, but I also have such an incredible community of family and friends that whenever I need the nudge and I need the push and I need someone to walk hand in hand with me to like see it, help me see it through, like those people are there too. Because it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
just about me, it's about the people that you walk in step with along that journey too.
Absolutely. No, that's very well said. And I know you got to be running here soon, Kat. There's so much more we could uncover here. I mean, I would love to ask you, like, I know you said before that Moab was kind of exploring how far, what's the limit of your endurance? And then it's like, oh,
Yep.
now you jump into Cocodona, which, it's like people might say, like, well, why do you need to do Cocodona? You already did Moab.
Yep.
And I could ask you then like, well, what's next? But I know, the short-term answer is, yeah, you're going to do Leadville and,
Yep.
see what you can do at the
Yeah,
quote
I'm
short
gonna switch
distance.
to
This,
Formula One now.
yeah, I was going to say, it just blows me away people now talking about 100-mile races as speed events and everything. But
Yeah, it's just like how fast can I make my aid station transitions now? And I'm like, feel like I'm training for a sprint.
oh, it
Like,
totally is. I mean, but the aid stations at Leadville have changed. Many of them are not crewed anymore. So, now it's very much, I learned a lot last year about, packing my drop bags differently than I had in the past. I never would have thought about it. But it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I don't have crew here for me. But,
yep.
that's a whole nother discussion we could have. But yeah, people talk about, Yeah, it's all about speed now in the 100-mile races, which I'm not that level, never have been, but
We're about to see where I'm at now. I haven't run anything shorter than 100 miles, 125 miles in over a year. So
right.
it'll feel like a really short day. The fact that I can like run a race and be in my bed, ideally in the same 24-hour time frame, seems like a pretty good deal to me. So,
Yeah, well, that's the way I always looked at 50-mile races, but yeah, for some of you out there, but yeah, it's cool. And as I mentioned earlier, I will be up there if you are needing crew, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be out there at Winfield and probably some points afterwards. So
yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, but I'm so appreciative of your time. Like I say, we could talk a whole lot more about a lot of interesting things because you
Yeah,
have I mean, not only the experiences, but I think the things that you learn that you can share with others is incredible. And, that's why, you're a coach yourself now. So
yeah,
you can pass that along to folks. It's so cool.
that's a goal. I love teaching and sharing and getting to use this little running life of mine to hopefully make other people's lives better too. So
Yeah. So as a reminder, Kat coaches with Chosky, which is Ty's group there. And so definitely if you're in need of this incredible amount of wisdom that Kat is passing along and more, please hit her up over there at Chosky.
awesome. Thank you, Bill.
Hey, you bet. Well, thanks again for this great conversation.
Thank you so much.
You bet.